All right, here we go. I've just got a list of questions. Some of them are targeted right to specific people, but general ones will let you kind of go down. Take 20 to 30 seconds, so we keep it kind of quick and short. Let's see, for John. Notice you have a PFG on your hydrogen. Tell us about your research.
PDF file.
PDF.
Notice on the computer there's hydrogen PDF file. And
Tell me about my research.
well, it's obviously there's some research on hydrogen there.
Essentially, I came to Colorado School of Mines to look at hydrogen production and green algae. I had a little bit of a rocky start. The advisor I was working under ended up leaving the school. And so I got a little freaked out and wrote some grants. And I'm currently working under NASA to look at the effects of microgravity in hydrogen production for long-term space flight. Matthew Posewitz, our research is completely analogous, and he kind of took me under his wing as my advisor, and we're working under his grant by the Air Force to look at the biodiversity of hydrogen production and green algae. So we're using those resources to start looking at culture collections and the variability of hydrogen production. So looking for the superstars. Like with fruits and vegetables, for thousands of years, millions of years, people have been able to look at it, taste it, feel it, think if it's good or die from it or whatever and know what's good. But with hydrogen production from algae, lipids from algae, these sorts of things, you can't just look at a microbe and know it. So we're developing techniques to be able to screen through these thousands and thousands of strains that currently exist in culture collections and determine what's there. Ways to seed, basically.
What is the current cost of canola? See how many of you follow this. And why would a farmer use an expensive oil for biodiesel? Must build that.
For the seed, the current price.
Anyone watch the Jacobson?
45 cents a pound for the oil, roughly, right now.
Wait, how much a gallon?
I know that
Yeah.
Blue Sun had been paying about 10 cents a pound for canola seed to their farmers recently. And the farmers needed about 16 cents a pound to make a profit. So it's always a big issue. It's a tough industry to be in, growing some of these kinds of seeds and fighting for the profits they need to sustain their operation. But I'm thinking that right now it might be at least 16 cents a pound and maybe as high as 20 cents a pound. I'm sure that the crushing operations are making a lot of money with the current prices of oil right now. They're making a killing. So it's a good time to do that, and I know that Lay's Potato Chips is looking for 5 new crushing operations in Colorado alone, where there's only one sunflower oil operation in this whole region right now. So it's in extremely high demand if we can just get the farmers to figure out how to profit themselves. They're the ones losing out.
And why? It's because they have, if that's what's available, if they're geographically separated from the oil, they might want to use it rather than ship it that way across the country, or it does have that value.
I think it is also a question of what the crusher would pay the farmer, not necessarily what the crusher is selling it for in the open market. But I think that looking at some of these farmers and then what their needs are, I think growing it and selling it may be the most appropriate thing to do. Maybe use that money to subsidize their
Okay. Next question, why aren't the true costs of petrodiesel, environmental, health, military, etc., taken into consideration when doing feasibility studies?
That's a really good
Okay. I'd like to.
Well, I mean, my kind of gut, I guess, feel for that is that we're not paying those. We're paying those, but we're not paying those at the pump. And so, maybe there's a question of perceived economics with respect to that. That is such a complicated issue. It's incredible. You think about if we were paying them or if we didn't need to pay them, would our taxes be lower? That's more or less, I guess, the opportunity cost associated with it. I don't know.
I think specifically with the feasibility study we were looking at, we were specifically looking at farm farmer's perspective. And if a farmer had a perspective, if there was an embedded cost of those things, that we would take that into account. But what the farmers were looking at was their bottom line. So that's what we had to go off of. And that was going to determine the choices that they made.
These metrics might very well change. You know that most of the big oil companies are now putting in-house CO2 taxes on all their products. And I think that it would, with time, these guys start to evolve.
Great. This one's for Matt. Are there any algae strains with high lipid contents and high cellulose content to make biodiesel and cellulosic ethanol from the same algae crop?
Yeah, there's not many algae with the cellulosic component. Usually that's a function of a arid crop sort of plant. It's a stalk and a stem. And so the algae, because they're in an aqueous system, typically don't have a cellulosic biomass. But there are lots of algae that have a split between lipids and starch. And starch is a much better feedstock to go into ethanol production than is cellulose. And so there are definitely algae that have a nice mix of the carbon portfolio that can go into multiple fuel types, for sure.
Okay. For NREL or Solix, has biodiesel from algae been made and tested? What's its cold flow properties, BTUs, etc.?
We've made just lab amounts of biodiesel from algae, and all we've really done, we haven't characterized it from an energy perspective. What we've done is just characterized it on a relative basis to canola-based or soy-based biodiesel to kind of get a sense for, what the chain length is. We've done GC work on it, and that's all favorable, at least from the few data points that we have. Again, as Matthew said, it's really a function of the species and the conditions under which you're growing that species. But we haven't done any of the other work on it.
No, that's exactly right. And I think that very few people have ever actually made any biodiesel in their car from algae. I don't know anybody. You know one?
Aquaflow Bionomics, and I believe it was B2, and it was like what again?
Yeah, and Brian's our chief technology officer, who was an engines guy originally, is of the mindset that it was probably the hexane they were running on from the extraction.
But I would say that we know that the lipids are verified lipid staining, and extraction technology is going to be difficult because unlike seed crops, there's oftentimes different types of oils than when you commonly find in seeds. So there's definitely going to have to be improvements in extraction technology to make it feasible to get out that 50% lipid that we know is there.
There's a lot of front-end work that still needs to go on what kind of lipids they are and what kind of cloud points and things you're going to get. But there's so many people working on this right now. There's going to be a lot of answers.
Yep, you bet. Also, I felt Steve Fugate is on this panel too. Do you want to step up and just really quick? I apologize. You didn't give a thing. Who you are, real fast for these people from the public that don't know.
I'm Steve Fugate. I'm founder of Yoderville Biodiesel Co-op. Been making fuel for about 4 years now, and we do play around with oilseed pressing and working with farmers and communities and colleges on local biofuel production. Is that one? Right.
He didn't do a presentation, I'm sorry. For those of you who would like to stick around, tomorrow he will do quite a few actually.
Today we also did waste oil.
He did waste oil today as well. Thanks, John. This one looks like quite a bit on algae. We've got a couple questions here for Watt actually. How do you get your hands on a good strain of algae?
There's all kinds of places that sell algae. There's the main culture collections in the United States is the CCMP, which is out of Maine, and they have a website. I think it's biglow.org, BIGLOW.org. The other big culture collection is the University of Texas, UTEX. Someone's driven down there and check out their collaboration. The third biggest culture collection is the University of Hawaii. That's the CC, the MMCE collection. Yeah, University of Hawaii. So those are the three big
the
collections.
SAG culture collection, or some culture from Germany actually.
Yeah. They're all around the world too. Absolutely. There's the SAG has got a collection in Germany. Pasteur's got one in France. And there's Allerton collections in Australia and New Zealand. Every country's got some scientific center that's got a store. Usually you can Google them. The biggest ones in the U.S. are the biglow.org, Maine, and the UTEX, and the CCMED.
Yeah, some of you Austin people should go tour the algae zoo down there. Visit Jerry, he's a nice guy.
What's the process for any of us to get a hold of that?
You send them a check for $50 and they'll send you a stream. They give you a recipe on how to grow it. So it's pretty easy.
How do you go from a watery algae to oil ready to process? Do you dry it out, et cetera, in real simplistic terms?
Well, again, it depends on the extraction technique. To do solvent extractions, you generally have to dry it out. We're working on with CSU, we're working on a process whereby you can take an algae water slurry and effectively do what they call in situ transesterification, which is essentially make biodiesel within the cell, and then through a course of action, more or less separate the biodiesel out from that. In which case, we won't have to dry it. We think there'll be energetic savings there.
Are there any partnerships available? Those that would like to invest into algae?
Not right now. When you say partnerships, do you mean in terms of collaboration on commercialization
maybe
or
what they're asking.
investment?
I think, I'm not sure. So,
investment, not right now, but on the commercialization side, we are always looking to talk to people that are interested in doing this. It's not our intention to be the British Petroleum of algae oil production, because we know that there are people that can execute out there better than we can. So, yeah, we're always having those conversations, and we're welcome them.
this one's a general one about canola. Does canola oil need to be degummed prior to being converted to biodiesel? And if so, why?
Yes, all of the oil seeds need to be degummed, any vegetable oil. The reason is if you don't degum it in the biodiesel process, it'll emulsify, and you won't be able to break down that emulsion. So you'll just have a huge mass of goo that you won't be able to do anything with. So it's critical that you degum the oil before you try to make biodiesel.
Anything else that is required to take raw oil to make biodiesel out of it when you're pressing, besides degumming?
It has a lot of suspended solids in it, so you have to filter it well and dry it as well. So the drying can be done in several parts of the process. You can either dry the seed up front or dry the oil afterwards. But there are other reasons in how the process is designed for what part of the process you dry the seed.
Thank you. This one's for Doug. Commercially algae feedstock, when do you think it's realistically available?
Is that Bob Arkentrout's handwriting?
I'll give it to you.
No, I know. That is the hardest question in the world to answer. Let me tell you where our expectation is. Our expectation is that, again, depending on your definition of commercialization, hopefully sometime in 2009, we will be producing from a commercial production facility algae oil. Will we be commercially feasible? In other words, will it be economically driven? That one is difficult to say because it's going to depend on yields. And that is, that's where you're on a per unit basis, so to speak. But that's our hope. And clearly there's a lot of work to be done on the algae side between now and then. So if you all want to pressure Matthew and Jonathan to work on that side with us, we'll get there quicker.
I heard an investment question. Anyone that's willing, they'll take money here. What is or have you calculated the energy balance on the Solix algae process?
No, we have not yet.
Okay. This is a general feed or seed question outside of algae. Is it feasible to process multiple species of seeds, i.e. canola, soy, what have you, cultivated within the same field and grown on a perennial rather than on an annual basis?
But rotating crops, I guess.
Is this a long-term spaceflight question?
Generally, a seed crushing process is optimized for a specific seed, and often with specific characteristics like the moisture content and things like that. So I would think that not only would it be difficult to harvest a mix of different kinds of seeds, especially like if you say soybeans and canola, I just don't know how that would be possible. And then to try to process them together would be very difficult. So unless they're very similar, like different varieties of mustard, canola.
And given our study, it looked like it would be really helpful to have multiple farmers working together. And so having multiple farms with multiple types of crops, I think, would increase the complexity of the land.
But probably not a good idea to plant them together, soy and canola.
But also monocropping also has its own problems. Maybe that's what this person is getting at. Monocropping is also not a great idea. And so rotation, crop rotation, that sort of thing, and it's definitely important to consider.
Last question for Doug, while you're popular tonight. Are you still involved with moving, well, they want your personal things here. Are you still involved and moving forward with your new Belgium brewery project? If so, where are you at?
Yes, we are, and right now we're just doing the engineering and the permitting for that. And we hope, it's our plan, and I don't see why we'll have to deviate from this, to have that commercial reactor, which is 100 meters long, about 15, 20 meters wide, in operation when weather turns nice next year. Yes, sir.
Is this from their beer waste?
CO2 from their fermentation and also from firing the boilers, yes. And it's not, we're not using their wastewater yet. That's something that's an opportunity that we definitely would love to pursue, because there's a lot of agricultural players out there that would love to be able to take their waste effluent and run it through these reactors, because it's nutrient rich. We're not there yet. We haven't even begun to do that kind of work. But it's an area where we think there's a great opportunity to do work, certainly to do the research, and hopefully to apply that to a commercial application.
Other questions?
If there would be any interest, I could throw some numbers up on cold flow properties of canola, soy, waste vegetable, poultry fat, and tallow, and price per pound. And maybe if that, just to kind of
I mean, we sell it and use it.
So let me, if I can throw this up on the board. Basically what it comes down to, again, this is not peer-reviewed study. This is like
Okay, we're going to have doors and cold blocks. And
fairly Bob-reviewed study. But what I did was, so the numbers I'm going to put up here, okay, thank you. The numbers I'm going to put up here are based on a mix of lab scale. So I don't expect all of you to be able to see this necessarily, but this is canola, soy, waste vegetable oil, poultry fat, and tallow. This tallow was what's called fancy white or edible. It looks like Crisco. I got it from National Byproducts in Denver. Nice stuff. It was 15 cents a pound about 2 years ago. When I looked at in centigrade degrees, so what I did was I transesterified these, a single base reaction with KOH with all of them. I ran them on a GC to ensure that I had gotten the STM spec level conversion, so less than 0.24 total glycerin. All of these, in fact, were less than 0.16, okay, because that was our rule of thumb. We don't like to be close because GCs are funny. And so that was basically the rule, right? And because what happens is with cold flow, for sure, is you're going to get different properties depending on how well you whack those triglycerides, okay? So I'm going to put up cloud points. I tested these with and I forget off the top of my head, and I didn't bring my stuff with me, but it's about a $4,500 unit where you inject into it, and if anybody has one of these and knows the name of it, throw it out here, but it's basically an optical thing where it sends a signal through it. Spectrometer? No, it's basically just it's a little box, and you basically squirt the fuel in, and it sends a signal through it, and optically, it chills it down, not even. It chills down the fluid, the fuel, and once it starts to cloud, the signal that's going through it and being received on the other end gets smaller, right?
Opacity factor.
Yeah, it's basically opacity, right? And so, again, what I did was I did four runs on the sample, and then I took an average. I threw out the high and low, okay? So again, not peer-reviewed, but I encourage those of you like me who want to know this stuff, just do it. See what you come up with. This is what I came up with, okay? So these are in degrees centigrade cloud point. Canola was -2. Okay, for those of you who are centigrade challenged, I'm sorry, that's about 28. Soy was 0, it's about 32. And this isn't going to be surprising, I don't think, to anyone. We kind of have known these numbers. Waste vegetable oil, about 4 centigrade.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not so bad, really. That's what, 39 Fahrenheit? Okay, poultry fat was 6, it's about 44. And tallow was 16. That's 61 Fahrenheit. Okay, so it wasn't 78. That's not what I saw either, but substantively different than the rest. The other thing, sort of interestingly, was price per pound. Okay, about 7.2, 7.3 pounds per gallon, unless your oil's wet, which is going to be bad for you. In terms of dollars, or in this case cents per pound. Okay? Canola, and these are numbers right now that are, no, these are based on what Bob's collected by talking to brokers in the last couple of weeks. It's generally FOB Denton, Texas, which is 25 miles north of Dallas, but it's going to show you the picture here, which I think might be worthwhile for this group. Canola, 45-ish cents a pound. That's probably on the low side. I talked to a guy who has a tortilla factory. He's paying 56 cents a pound for a mix of canola, and it's got a little bit of palm in it, blend. So then that's food grade. Something like 45 cents a pound for canola right now. 40 cents a pound-ish for soy. Probably about 42 really. It depends a lot on trucking, okay? Waste vegetable oil, I'm gonna hold that aside for just a second, and I'll do it now. It's 25 cents a pound, right, roughly?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. But because we only get 50 cents back instead of $1 from the government, we need to add about 7 or 8 cents per pound. You with me on that?
Yes.
Okay? And because of yield differences, it's more like 8.5, but let's call it 7 cents. So I took 25 and I added 7, and I called that 32 cents a pound. Everybody follow that? Okay, and that's what it is financially. Poultry fat, and again, if Rachel is still here,
Yeah.
I'm putting 30, well I wrote 32. 30, that's on a good day, right? You guys get that?
Yeah.
Okay, they're closer to chickens than we are. She's in North Carolina. Okay, I'm in Texas. We've been seeing 32, so 30 is probably about right. And tallow, what I heard from you was 20. Is that a pretty good number?
Yeah.
Anybody else heard 20 for beef tallow lately? But so here's the deal, right? Gee, there's some sort of correlation here, isn't there? Okay? And so I guess there's, again, no big point here other than this is great fuel. If you do freezer tests on this fuel, so I made B100s and then I made B20s with all of these feedstocks. I also did peanut and cottonseed oil. And I stuck them in the freezer. So I had, and in the fridge. My fridge happened to be 31 Fahrenheit, so it was about -1 C-ish, not quite. My freezer was about 0 Fahrenheit, okay? That's Colorado in the winter, okay? And what I saw was, so I'm going to go to qualitative just for a second.
Did you have any additives? Or
No.
just straight biodiesel?
Yeah, straight by. What kind of additives? Other than diesel? No. So the B20 had 80% petroleum diesel in it.
What I'm saying is that you didn't add anything to it. And in the process, the
Correct.
real world
You mean like a cold flow?
tallow-based biodiesel that's produced in Pittsburgh,
Yes.
sold, no problems in the winter. There are proprietary additives that are added in the plant that lower the cold flow. So you're doing, like, the numbers you're putting up are great. I agree with you. It's a cheaper feedstock. That's why you use it, because it's cheaper and prices are going out of control and you can't make money
Right.
over soy. But I think your numbers are just off because you're just, it's like you're saying you're quoting the Jacobson price, not counting the local cost of delivery and things like that. So,
Well, I disagree with you there, because these are actually FOB Denton, Texas, which is where my plant is.
I'm saying, and I know where my plant is,
Right.
and what we pay and the fuel we make.
So you're
And
transfer-certified
our-
beef tallow.
and our 0 failure rate. And we have clients running from B2 to B20 to B100 meat. And with no failures, no cold.
What's the melt point of the tallow? Not transfer-certified, but of the tallow. Roughly?
I'm sorry, the melt point of it?
Yeah. So in other words, at what point would the tallow itself, before you transfer-certify it, go from a solid to a liquid, roughly?
I don't know that number.
Okay. The stuff I did was about 110. But I've seen typically what was being used down at Bioenergy of America in Denver was in the 90 to 100 to 110 range.
Yeah, my stuff's not peer reviewed, it's just real world tested, and I'm just throwing that out there.
So I would like you. Would you send me a sample of your fuel?
Also, for those who don't know, this is for the general public. This is Bob Armentrout. He has done biodiesel testing, biodiesel production, and made, what, 3/4 gallons?
I don't know.
Somewhere.
Mostly Steve, maybe,
He's
but-
currently starting a one-man show.
Yeah, and I'm Nathaniel, and I've, worked with commercial
Yes.
producers, produced
Yeah,
over
and
$1 million
biodiesel.
of this stuff, and it hasn't had those failures at those temperatures, so I just,
You ever get the snow globe effect from mom and diglycerides coming out as small crystals at those temperatures? You ever seen that?
Yeah, Denver Biodiesel ran beef tallow that was advertised from Bioenergy Colorado in May, and of the 5 cars that put it in the tank, 4 of them froze.
Yeah, I mean, biodiesel is so local, you know, like there's no, we have all these different producers with different process controls, different equipment, you know, different people making the fuels. I think, you know, to generalize, to say beef tallow biodiesel is X is irrelevant. And that's my position.
Yeah, and I think we can all appreciate that, but understand in this room, a lot of us have actually done this stuff, plus we've looked at peer-reviewed studies on this.
And I don't know who's done it too, and who's selling
So the cool part is,
yeah.
send me a sample,
Great.
and because I'll be the one who'll go, hey, guess what, Luis? Hey, guess what, guys? Hey, guess what? This guy's got it.
No, Bob,
Okay?
it's something about the cows. You gotta just bring the cows down to Texas.
Stuff like that. Are you doing an distillation in your process of the fuel? In other words, distilling the esters?
Distilling the esters. We do take, lower the temperature and take lower grade and put that into the boiler.
Okay. Okay, so that's a really good point, right? You guys heard what he said? Because that's a good point. The thing absolutely works. Cold filtering, right? Absolutely works. So if you take that ester and you chill it, right? In your tank like you did, like Tom DeVanzo didn't, and you take those chains which are short, less hydrogenated or less saturated. Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
disagree at all that different oils and different fats have different properties when you're making the biodiesel. I'm just saying that there are people out there making high quality tallow-based biofuels that operate effectively at temperatures.
Well, here's the thing, Nathaniel, is we're all here trying to make fuel, and if you're not willing to tell people how to make tallow biodiesel that's going to run in cold flow, it's not really helpful to anyone here.
Well, I think he just did tell us, and that's a cool thing, because cold flow does work, or cold filter does work, right?
Well, let me state 2 things. Let me state first that I run a nonprofit organization that brokers and educates and educate people about biofuels, and I work with a commercial producer closely. And I as the man gentleman from Solix, like you just can't come up here and say what he does. You know, he's a private company, and I have an agreement. I'm not a non-disclosure here. I'm not going to come up and say what he does to his fuel. I'm more than happy to send a sample and have that tested and have that reviewed because we're selling this product in the market. You know, like all I'm trying to say is that there are people out there making high quality tallow-based biofuels.
I think that's wonderful, and we'll kind of take this conversation back over to here. Are there any other further questions? We just got to end up for the night. Yes.
Other than the algae, are there any other alternative feedstocks in the works?
Liposuction.
And for those that follow the info platform, cats. That's right. Not that I'm aware of. Yes. The questions? Okay. We'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. We'd like to thank our guests who came. Feel free to come down and ask questions if you have further, though. Thank you. Have a nice night.